and welcome to the Extemporaneous Public Speaking CDE. We have 4 participants today. We ask at this time that you silence and put away all cell phones. We ask that you remain seated throughout the duration of the contest unless we're in rotation. If we're rotating between competitors, you are then allowed to leave the room. Courtesy Court, please secure the doors. Our first contestant is Eric Robinson of the Effingham County High FFA.
Good afternoon. Today I bring you my speech entitled, Saving Farming. Farming built the United States. From the beginning of time, we farmed to make our food. Back then, we didn't have grocery stores you could go to. We didn't have these big supermarkets. We had a family who knew how to produce, and that's what we went with. Over time, farming became a generational practice. Generation after generation would farm. The land would be passed down to the next man to pick up where the last farmer left off. But then things changed. We changed. We began to industrialize. We began to move to more urban cities. And through this movement, the practice of farming began to deplenish. We went from a booming 41% of farmers in the United States to 2%. 2% of farmers of the United States. And that's all that we have. Now, it's starting to improve, yes, as of 2017, but it's not where it needs to be. So the question arises, how do we fix this? How do we go back to the days of 41%, or maybe even better? And the answer is simple. We have to go back to the basics. In order for you to know how to do something, you have to be taught it. Think about it. Everything you all know right now, from basic math to English, you had to be taught. And from you being able to teach it, that's when you begin to get the love for it, and then your urge to spread it. That's what has to happen with farming. Because nowadays, people don't live on farms all the time. They don't have to wake up at 6 in the morning to go to the field and make sure the soil is tilled. They don't have to go out to the pig barn and make sure that the animals are fed. That's what they had to do in the past, and that's why farming is at an all-time high. So what if we taught it to them? What if at the same time these kids were learning these basic skills of math, science, and English? They were learning agriculture. They were learning how to farm, and they were learning how to produce. That would change American agriculture drastically. I can give from personal example. I never grew up on a farm. As the creed said, I never endured the joys and discomforts of agricultural life. But I'm working on a farm right now, bootleg farm. And through this working on the farm, I have developed a love for farming and producing for people all around the state of Georgia. And it's something that I want to continue throughout my years. But that wasn't something that was already inside of me. That was something that somebody else instilled. And that's what has to happen in order to make farming as big as it used to be. But thankfully, someone else other than me noticed that. As of today, April 27th, at the 5th General Session of the 90th Georgia FFA Convention, Governor Deal will take the stage, and he will sign into legislation Senate Bill 330. Now this bill will allow elementary schools to have agricultural education programs. So at the same time, these kids are learning about math and science. Agriculture is also present. The bill also says that they'll be getting hands-on experience. They won't just be in front of a teacher telling them how to farm. They'll be at the farms, learning to do it themselves. It is things like this that are going to carry agriculture into the future. It's up to us to make it right. It's up to us to carry the next generation. It is up to us to save an industry. Thank you.
You mentioned that currently we're at 2% or less of our population in agriculture versus 41% years ago. Now, in many cases, we already have an oversupply of a lot of our commodities. If we go from 2% to 40% or even 30% producing, how will we, how will this affect this oversupply of commodities, and how will they be able to sell them at a profitable price?
So that is a very good question. But for that answer, you just have to look at how the layout of the world is today. While we live where we have an overproduction amount of our materials, there are countries around the world who live in poverty and who don't have the same things that we have. If we were able to increase our amount of farmers, therefore increasing our amount of production, that's going to give those countries more time and more energy and more products in order to become a stable economy and a stable country.
What about distribution? How do we can produce it here, but how do you deal with the lack of distribution and infrastructure in those other countries to be able to move that commodity?
Well, so like I said at the beginning of our speech, the world always changes, and we change with it. I believe that if we did encounter this amazing feat of rising it to, like you said, 30%, I think it would also be up to us to go to these other countries and establish what we need to have in order to make a stable world and a stable environment for all these new materials.
You've talked about agricultural education being in the elementary schools and some other things. Are there any other organizations that you would say besides FFA that could help in encouraging young people to become interested in farming and agriculture?
I love this question because I actually was in 4-H before I joined FFA, and I learned that 4-H also has livestock showing programs. Now with 4-H, sure, it's not centered around agriculture like FFA is, but they're still going to be able to get that experience that they would get farming. It's all connected. It's all the same. We're all connected through agriculture. So is it just 4-H and FFA? No, there are countless others. There's the Young Farmers Association, which promotes farming everywhere. There are a lot of different outlets that people could go to learn about agricultural education and farming.
Eric, tell us some things that you and your fellow FFA members in your community are doing to encourage more people to get involved in farming.
Recently, our chapter, along with our community, bought Honey Ridge Plantation, which is a large farm out in Rincon, Georgia, about 20 minutes from Savannah. Now, Honey Ridge, what we do there is, yes, we have our showers keep their animals there, but recently we actually started programs for people in first grade to come out and have farm tours and experience what we do there in agriculture. And the latest thing that we had was the pre-K students who are at our school. We brought them the animals from the farm, and we let them milk them, and we let them feed them, just to see what it was like to be an agriculturist and a farmer. These are just 2 steps that we're taking in the right direction.
Eric, I want to ask, we're living in a generation that's much different than it was 50 years ago. We live in a generation where cash is king and people like to get rich as quickly as they can. We live in a generation that thinks a lot differently than 50 years ago. Why should someone who's young and can make money quick get into agriculture, farming, where it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money to make money? Why should I become a farmer?
And so that's the biggest question that's facing agriculture today, the apathy of our generation. And that is completely understandable. Like you said, why would you want to work hours a day whenever you can just work a 9-to-5 job and get paid $30,000 a year? If you have a lot of money, but you don't have food, you don't have produce, what do you really have? If you're not able to provide for yourself and the economy, there's nowhere for your money to go except your pockets. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
please secure the doors. We ask that you silence and put away all cell phones at this time. We also ask that you remain seated while the contestant is competing. You are free to leave the room once we are in rotation. Our second extemporaneous speaker is Addy Ridley of the Murray County FFA.
Jackie Robinson, baseball legend, major league icon, and first African American to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. That's what comes to my mind when I hear his name. As he approached the plate for his first major league at bat, all he heard was racial slurs and the booing of the crowd. Now, I know it sounds a little presumptuous to try and put yourself in the shoes of a legend, but I'm going to give it a try. Here I am walking up to the plate, nervous but excited, focused but ready. I step up to the plate, watch for the pitch, and bam, I'm hit by a curveball. But it wasn't necessarily the ball coming my way that caught me off guard. You see, Jackie Robinson did not turn back. Instead, he kept going on to live his life by this motto: a life isn't important except for the impact that it has on others. An agriculturalist's life is reflective of this motto, dedicating each day of his or her life just to impact others, only to get hit by curveballs, whether it be Mother Nature, drought, economic failures, or policies and regulations. But just as Jackie Robinson did, we do not turn back. Instead, we step up to the plate, dig our cleats or boots in, and solve the problem. Agriculturalists have to focus on more for the many and less for the one. As we concentrate on the more, we must acknowledge the concern of urban agriculture's effects on agricultural literacy. Urban agriculture could be anything from hydroponics to programs such as Georgia Young Farmers. The key purpose for urban agriculture is to give populated areas that have limited land the ability to have agriculture, and it also educates people on agriculture. Georgia Young Farmers is an example of urban agriculture, but how? It provides instruction to not only meet the current needs of agriculture, but it also educates the purpose for on the cutting edge of technology that we use, hence the word urban. Programs such as Georgia Young Farmers combat agricultural literacy in an outstanding way. The way agriculturalists view and teach agriculture is not the same as someone that is uneducated on the field. Agriculture is constantly depicted over media, TV shows, children's books, and movies. For example, Charlotte's Web. The family farm is always struggling, just as it is in almost every single children's book or movie. But if we educate the public by showing them that urban agriculture is more than vertical farming, hydroponics, or drones, and show them that agriculture is more than that, it will be perceived differently. According to the USDA, 1 out of 7 Georgia employees are in the agriculture field. So why not start there? If we can educate Georgia young farmers, such as Georgia employees, to expand their recruitment to social media, and by recruiting through programs such as Georgia Young Farmers, we can expand the role of urban agriculture through leadership. While us as agriculturalists think about urban agriculturalist effects on urban literacy, we can help build up our industry using the programs around us and the people that we already have. Just as Jackie Robinson did, we must look diversity in the face and not be afraid to step up to the plate. We must not be afraid to accept the challenge that urban agriculture is being depicted just because of the way that people view literacy. So will you let anti-agriculturalists and doubters sway the way of the largest industry on the globe? Or will you step up to the plate. Thank you.
Most people in urban areas are several generations disconnected from agricultural roots or ancestors. What is the perception of most people today in the urban areas such as Atlanta and even in some of our other cities? What is their perception of agriculture and what a farmer is, what a farmer does?
A good example would be the farm bill that's going on right now. They had to incorporate health to agriculture because people in urban areas see nutrition as agriculture. So if we wanted to target people in urban areas, why not bring it to the level that they understand it? Everyone wants to be healthy, but what they don't understand is that in order to be healthy, it's a way for agriculture as well.
But do they see, they have the idea, their idea of urban agriculture is I can have a backyard garden and I can grow everything. So why should farmers, why do I need big farmers out here that that they perceive as doing all the bad things to the environment? Why do they think that their method of growing stuff in backyard or rooftop gardens or community gardens, why that should be better for them versus how we produce food today?
It's the way that agriculture is depicted on media. Like, for example, social media depicts agriculture in so many ways because they show pictures of animals being tortured in slaughterhouses or in farms, but what they don't show is that they just take a picture of the bad things and they don't tell the whole story. So people in urban areas, they'll see that and they'll think, well, what's the point of this? That's where animal rights versus animal welfare comes in, and that's how we educate them on situations such as that.
Addy, what are some specific programs, you mentioned the young farmers, but them or any other organizations that are using to combat this problem in urban areas?
FFA would be a prime example, or 4-H, because FFA is not only in rural areas that are booming in farming. Such as an example, there's FFA in cities such as Atlanta or Macon. Why would they put them in those cities if they didn't see the need to educate urban cities just as much as rural environments?
Most people in urban environments have the idea that, well, I grow food, I can just go to the store and get it. What are some ways we can break that mentality and to just take an easy way and go into the store versus actually getting out and doing it? How can we defeat that ideology of let's just go buy it versus let's go grow it?
A good example would be the way that people label organic foods. People in urban areas or even places where I live in a rural community, they'll see organic oranges compared to regular oranges and just kind of want to lean towards the organic just because of the label itself. But what they don't know, it's scientifically proven that organic and regular doesn't have really that much indifference in health purposes. So if we were to educate them on how people farm things, like such in your backyard, that it's the same as buying it from the store. So there's really no difference. We just have to educate those people through programs such as what I just explained to him.
There are a lot of different definitions of agricultural illiteracy. So when we're talking about how urban agriculture can help combat that, what would be your definition of ag illiteracy in those areas?
When I think urban, I think technology, such as social media or TV shows. Because in the urban environments, it's proven that 41% of Americans over the age of 18 use technology or social media 7 to 8 times a day. And if adults use that, could you imagine how much children use that? So if we can contact them through programs such as social media or TV shows, maybe they'll see that urban agriculture is more than just providing fancy ways to farm. Thank you.
for, please secure the doors. We ask at this time that you silence and put away all cell phones. We also ask that you remain seated and do not try to exit the room. You'll be able to exit the room once we're in rotation. Our third extemporaneous speaker is Austin Casey of the Lee County FFA.
Conservationist, environmentalist, loan officer, family man or woman, community leader, and an overall hard worker is just a snapshot into the everyday life of an agriculturalist or producer. These hard-working men and women that I just described face challenges on a daily basis. One of these challenges, ladies and gentlemen, is climate change. With over 2 million farms and 913 billion acres of farmland in the United States alone, this is a grand task to protect this land and its yield from climate change. But thanks to agri-science and technology, there is a solution. One solution that agri-science and technology offers us is regional climate hubs. Regional climate hubs were created for one reason and one reason alone: to better educate and inform the farmer. Regional climate hubs are catered specifically to each region out of 7. And what they do is they give raw information and data to the farmer based on growing cycles, based on heat resistance, based on pests, based on drought or flood risk. It gives all this information to the farmer or the producer. Regional climate hubs also give them forecasts months in advance to help them better prepare for the growing cycle to come. And the best part about regional climate hubs is a farmer doesn't have to take a day out of his hard work to drive to go get this information. The USDA has made it readily available online on the Regional Climate Hub webpage. Another solution that agri-science and technology offers us when it comes to climate change is GMOs, genetically modified organisms, that allows us to directly pick the genes that we want in our crops. GMOs offer unlimited possibilities. If there's a drought in your local region, then you can create a crop that uses less water. If there's a pest problem in your region, you can create a crop that is pest resistant. As I said, the options for GMOs are truly unlimited. And finally, another solution that agri-science and technology offers us to better combat climate change is vertical farming. Vertical farming is taking multi-level buildings and recycling them in city or urban locations and turning them into agricultural facilities. Vertical farming allows agriculturalists to control every aspect of the growing cycle. And what I mean by that is if a farmer needs more water or less water, you control how much water there is so you don't have to worry about drought or flooding. You don't have to worry about pesticide or herbicide because there simply are no pests. You don't have to worry about testing the soil because you control exactly what soil you put into these vertical farms. And the best part about it is they save the farmers money by using up to 30 to 40% less water and being completely energy efficient, most of them having solar panels. And lastly, in conclusion, if we take agri-science and technology through GMOs, vertical farming, and regional climate hubs, I believe that we can help agriculturalists and farmers be readily available to combat climate change. Thank you.
We hear so much about climate change. You know, how do we know what is the real truth of climate change? How do we know what is the, I mean, you know, this group says this is causing it, this group says causing it. But how do we know how much of what we're being told is truthful about climate change? And how do we say, you know, how do we believe that information?
Well, one thing is true, and that there is climate change. That is shown by statistics and facts over the years. Now, who's to blame? That is a very controversial topic, as you just said. I believe that every aspect of every different industry has reason to blame for CO2 emissions or other things such as this, but who did it isn't as important as a topic as how do we combat it, how do we change this, and how do we work together to better prepare ourselves for what is to come.
Is there a defining line when we say climate change started, or has this been something that's been going on since creation?
Well, I believe that climate change has been going on since creation. I don't believe that it's something that started in 1903. I think it's something that has grown over the years, in recent years, but I believe that it's something that's always been there. And you can take that back to ice ages, and it's still happening today with glaciers being melted. But I don't believe that it was something that started on a specific date, just something that's kind of always been there.
I personally know dozens of farmers who have kept track by hand for the past 40 years, every day, the weather, how it's changed, how much it rained. They do not believe in climate change. To them, it is a made-up thing the government is trying to suck everybody into. They're not going to change their methods of farming. There's no way that you're going to persuade them otherwise. How? Explain to me how you're going to convince them that there's climate change when they live it and do it every day for almost a half a decade.
I believe that a good solution to this is the regional climate hubs, as I talked about earlier. They don't directly address climate change, however, they do give actual information about what's happening now or what is to come. They're not attributing what's happening to climate change, it's just simply information for the farmers to use. So no, these farmers don't have to change their production methods because they believe in climate change. However, they can change their production methods to coexist with these climate hubs, information and data from the USDA.
So regardless of if we believe climate change, what are some challenges that you believe farmers are facing because of climate change happening?
Well, there are many challenges: drought, flooding, more fires. Whether you believe that it is climate change or it isn't, these things are happening. So it's not what's causing it, it's how these things are happening. And although there are a lot of negative effects, with the things that I just talked about, vertical farming, GMOs, and climate hubs, we can take this agri-science technology and turn it around to our benefit as agriculturalists.
You've got a group out there that says we have all these climate change problems, but yet many times those are the people that are anti-GMO. How do you convince them that use of genetically modified organism crops will help them benefit reduction of climate change?
Well, if they do believe in climate change, then they believe in drought, that drought's going to be caused and that floods are going to be caused. And although they may be anti-GMO, GMOs use up to 30% less water. So although they may be stuck in their beliefs, facts are facts, and GMOs are one of the largest things to combat climate change. So I believe that to change their opinions, all we would have to do is ag literacy and teach them the truth, because there are a bunch of things out there that are giving false information to people or misleading people. So if we use positive ag literacy alongside with agri-science and technology, I believe that we can come to a solution.
What can we in the agribusiness industry do to help with this situation?
With the situation of climate change or GMOs? Both? All right. As agribusinesses, to combat climate change and GMOs, like I just said earlier.
Time.
Thank you.
Courtesy Corps, please secure the door. We ask that you silence and put away all cell phones at this time. We also ask that you remain seated. You will be allowed to leave the room once we are in rotation. Our fourth and final extemporaneous public speaker is Oscar Resendez of the North Murray FFA.
I would like you all to imagine a world. Let's say a boy in India, his family is suddenly cut off from their income and can no longer support themselves. And though the boy is optimistic for his family's future, he later starves because his country doesn't have the agricultural means to support him or his family. Imagine that a hurricane hits a section of the United States, but we can't support to help the surviving victims because our food supply has been stretched out to the limit. These are very hypothetical situations, ones which I'm sure none of us would like to see today, and ones which are impeded partly by one certain animal, the honeybee. Honeybees pollinate the vast majority of the food that we eat today, the food that we eat every day. Every day we see a new ad about protecting this insect, protecting the bees. See, before humanity took the planet by storm, the planet used to be an amazing biosphere. Incredible habitats, incredible food chains made of food webs were amazingly structured for organisms. There was a slight drawback, however. If one of these organisms were to go extinct, it could disrupt entire ecosystems. But that wasn't really a problem until humans came in. Humans, with their ambitions and dreams, have affected the planet in ways that we never thought possible. In particular, we've affected the honeybee. Today, bees are under attack by a disorder known as colony collapse disorder. Colony collapse disorder is the process by which worker bees leave their hives for seemingly no reason, leaving the queen bee and some nurse bees to fend for themselves in their now empty home. The thing is, we don't really know why this happens at all. Let's go over some of the possible causes. Climate change. Climate change has affected the planet drastically. We now have wet seasons, dry seasons, cold seasons that are shifted across the calendar. Bees, which probably haven't been allowed enough time to adapt to their circumstances, may have died or moved to more hospitable areas, leaving the queen bee and nurse bees to fend for themselves. The use of pesticides. This one seems fairly obvious. Farmers spray harmful chemicals onto plants, bees find them unpollinatable and subsequently leave. Scotland, in fact, which has a rampant use of pesticides, has seen an up to 50,000 loss of bees due to colony collapse disorder. The United States could have this problem in the future because in the US, some pesticides which are illegal in Europe or Asia are perfectly fine to use. The destruction of plant life. Sometimes humans will altogether kill flowers, grasses, or trees in order to sell to the market. Sometimes, bees, which are deprived of their homes, of their way of life, may simply fly off to another area. There's a running theme here, one which many of you may have already seen: human intervention. Like it or not, humans are the ones causing organisms to have these rare disorders. It's a grim thought, but it's also a hopeful one. It means that we can do something about it. Climate change is obviously a huge concept, but we can pass legislation or allow agricultural technologies to push forward ways that agriculturists cannot be affected while also saving organisms from extinction. The use of pesticides. Following in the steps of Europe and Asia, we can ban some harmful chemicals which disrupt the way of life of bees. The destruction of plant life. This one seems like an easy one to solve, such as in Nigeria, where they pay agriculturists to save some arable land. Or in Brazil, where even though deforestation used to run rampant because of its use of the Amazon rainforest, it's recently gone down because of government intervention. In the beginning of this speech, I asked you all to imagine a world in which the agricultural industry failed us. I now ask you to imagine one in which it succeeded. One in which bees and other organisms are saved. One in which we use our means of production to save the planet. The question still stands. How are we going to save the planet, or how are we going to solve climate change or other factors which could lead to the extinctions of organisms or to rare disorders such as bee colony collapse disorder? If we're going to do that, now isn't the time for imagination. Now is the time for action. Thank you.
Right now, the EPA is considering renewing the registration of 4 neonicotinoid products. What is a way that you think that we can have that process can go forward while balancing both producer and beekeeper needs?
There has to be a balance between saving organisms and not affecting the American farmer. The American farmer is obviously very important to the United States too. They feed the people. I heard a very good quote which stated, "Once in your life do you need a lawyer, a doctor, or a professional. But every day, 3 times a day, you need a farmer." Of course, bees are extremely important too. They pollinate the vast majority of the food that we eat today. In order to solve this problem, I think that we need to compensate farmers for doing things that would save bees, such as producing less emissions, saving arable land, or saving the habitat of bees or other organisms which may live in their property.
You mentioned the use of different pesticides that are illegal in Europe and other places, but legal here. Yet without pesticides, we don't have the production we have. What are some of the things that are being done to facilitate and manage use of pesticides and still not have an adverse effect on bee population?
Well, obviously there has to be a balance too. The use of pesticides is harmful to many organisms on the country and also on the planet. On the way that we're going right now, the disruption of our ecosystem will lead to a crash of humanity, I think, in the next millennia or even in the next century. Some of the things that we can do in order to balance between pesticides and organism health is maybe not use so many of them, or maybe find other technologies that would help the production of agriculture to remain the same while also saving organisms. In the past, we've tackled problems such as the production of cotton, such as the use of slavery, or such as the problem of the Dust Bowl, which may have been caused by humans. I believe that in the future, through technology or through agricultural innovation, we can solve that problem as well.
Would one of the solutions for this be use of transgenic or genetically modified crops that do not require the use of certain insecticides?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Would one of these options be the use of genetically modified or transgenic crops that would not require the use of insecticides that may be harmful to bees? Would that be a possibility?
Absolutely. I heard of a recent technology called CRISPR. It stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. And even though it's a big name, it's really just a simple process. They go into any organism and they can change the DNA, which is the code of life of that organism. They can change it to either adapt to certain habitats or to have certain characteristics which may benefit the organism or the market or the consumer which is receiving that plant or organism.
Well, the thing about it is bees have existed a very long time. There's been bees long before documentation as we started taking documentation on problems. How do we know that this disorder didn't happen long before humans started taking note? And here we are, we've just noticed it. And it just seems like the humans are getting demonized for something that might have been happening long before we started taking note. Explain to me how we can change that, how we can be more knowledgeable about things that happened way before we started taking documentation on it.
Bees, as well as other organisms, have been around for a long time. There are some organisms that have been around for millions of years, before even humans have taken record of our ecosystem, which have now gone extinct because of proven human intervention. Something that comes to mind is the dodo bird, which may have not gone extinct if humans wouldn't have gone to that certain island and filled it with invasive species. Though we aren't exactly sure that the humans are the things that caused the extinction of bees or the downfall of bees, we certainly know that the things that I just named are very harmful to other organisms as well. Climate change isn't only affecting bees. Solving climate change wouldn't only have the effect of saving bees, it would also have the effect of saving other organisms, of saving entire habitats. The use of pesticides, we know, is very harmful to some insects or to some organisms. The deforestation, we know, obviously, deprives some organisms of their habitat. Solving these 3 things would benefit bees, of course, but would also benefit other factors. I think that solving the 3 things that I named, we should do not only for bees, but for other things as well. as for
Time.
researching, thank you.